General Park Tahoe stood tall on the bridge of his ship, the Asterisk Defender Asterisk. At 53 years old, his hair was gray at the temples, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He commanded humanity's border defense fleet with pride. 20 ships under his control protected the edge of human space. "Sir, the Krun ship is asking to talk," said Officer Lee. Park nodded. The Krun Empire was big and powerful. They had taken over many worlds and made many alien races serve them. Now they were at humanity's doorstep. "Put them on screen," Park ordered. The alien face that appeared looked almost like a cat, but with scales instead of fur. It had yellow eyes with thin black lines for pupils. "I am Envoy Rax of the glorious Krun Empire," the alien said. "We offer your species the honor of peaceful integration into our realm." Park kept his face calm. He knew what integration meant. The Krun would take Earth's resources and make humans work for them. "Thank you for your offer," Park said, "but humans wish to stay free. We can trade with the Krun Empire as equals." The alien's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps you do not understand. The Krun Empire does not ask. We inform. Resistance has ended badly for others." "Then perhaps you do not understand," Park said, his voice firm. "Humans do not bow to threats. We expect the Krun to respect our space. That is not a request." For a moment, tension filled the bridge. Then, surprisingly, the alien nodded. "Your position is noted, General. Perhaps we have been too direct. We will discuss trade options instead." The screen went dark. The bridge crew looked at each other in shock. Did they just back down? Lieutenant Kim Jisoo asked. She was young, only 26, with short black hair and keen eyes. Park frowned. "It seems so, but the Krun never back down. Something isn't right." Still, that night, the human ships had a small party. They thought they had won without a fight. Park didn't join them. He stayed in his room, looking at pictures of his wife and daughter back on their colony world. Kim found him there. "Sir, we should head back to Earth soon. Tell them what happened." Park nodded. "Tomorrow. Tonight. Let the crew celebrate. But double the watch, Lieutenant. I don't trust the Krun." "Yes, sir," Kim said. At 300 hours, alarms blared. Park ran to the bridge in his sleek clothes. "Report," he shouted. "Krun ships, sir. They came out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't see them coming," Officer Lee yelled. "Battle stations. All ships form." Park never finished. A bright beam cut through the ship. The bridge exploded in fire. Kim was thrown against a wall. Through smoke and pain, she saw Krun soldiers board the ship. They wore black armor and carried strange weapons. "Find the human leader," one ordered. Kim crawled to an escape pod. Her arm was burned badly. Through tears of pain, she watched as the soldiers found General Park. He was hurt but alive. They dragged him away. The last thing Kim saw before her escape pod launched was Park fighting against his captors. The pod tumbled through space. Through its small window, Kim watched in horror as the Krun destroyed the human fleet. One by one, the ships exploded in silent bursts of light. Then a broadcast came through on all channels. The Krun wanted everyone to see what happened next. General Park stood tall, even with his wounds. The Krun had him on a platform on their ship. "Let this be a lesson," the Krun commander said to the camera. "This is what happens to those who deny the Empire." They set Park on fire. Kim covered her mouth to stop from screaming. Tears ran down her face as she watched her general burn. He did not beg. He did not scream. He stared at the camera with eyes full of defiance until the end. The broadcast cut off. Kim's pod floated in the darkness of space, carrying the lone survivor and witness to what would soon be known as the spark that lit humanity's fury. Lieutenant Kim Jisoo's escape pod landed on a small human mining colony. Her burns were bad. The miners rushed her to their small medical center. "The fleet, all gone," she told them through her pain. "They killed General Park." burned him alive. Within hours, the news reached Earth. The video of Park's execution spread to every corner of human space. People watched in horror as the brave general stood tall while flames took his life. In the great hall of the Earth Council in New Seoul, leaders from all human worlds gathered. The room was large, with a round table in the middle. Screens on the walls showed the faces of those who could not come in person. Admiral Choi Dong-wook sat with his head in his hands. He was 60 years old, with a strong face lined by years of service. Park had been his best student and closest friend. "We must send diplomats," said one counselor. "Find out why the Krun attacked. Maybe it was a mistake." "A mistake?" Choi looked up. His eyes were red. "They burned my friend alive for the galaxy to see. That was no mistake." The council president, a tall woman named Ba, raised her hand for quiet. "Lieutenant Kim, tell us again what happened," she said. Kim stood. Her arm was wrapped in bandages. She told the story one more time. How General Park had refused to bow to the Krun. How they pretended to accept his terms. How they attacked in the night. "General Park knew something was wrong," she finished. "He didn't trust them." "Park was always smart that way," Admiral Choi said. He stood up and walked to a computer. "What none of you know is that Park has been collecting information on the Krun for years." He entered a code, and files appeared on the main screen. "Park sent me updates every month. He found weak spots in Krun ships. He mapped their territory. He even found ways to block their sensors." The council members looked at each other in surprise. "Why didn't he share this information?" asked Councillor Han. "Because he hoped we would never need it," Choi said. "But he prepared anyway." That was Park. Before anyone could respond, the main screen changed. A message was coming in. The face that appeared belonged to a Krun, but this one wore a golden crown. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am Emperor Yoon of the Krun Empire. Your border commander refused our generous offer. For this insult, he was punished." The room was silent. Everyone stared at the alien emperor, who spoke with a cold voice. "To show our power, we have cleansed the human colonies of Proxima, Ta Ceti, and Epsilon Eridani. Their resources now belong to the Empire." Gasps filled the room. Those colonies had millions of people. "Submit now, and the rest will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire." The screen went dark. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Admiral Choi broke the silence. 3 colonies, millions of lives. His voice was quiet but filled with rage. "They're not just attacking our borders. They're trying to wipe us out." "We need time to evacuate our other colonies," said one counselor. "We should." "No," Kim interrupted. She stood up straight despite her pain. "General Park didn't ask for time. He stood his ground." She pointed to the screen where the Emperor's face had been. "They think we're weak. They think we'll run and hide." Choi nodded slowly. "Lieutenant Kim is right. The Krun understand only one thing: power." President Ba looked around the room. One by one, the council members nodded. "Admiral Choi," she said finally, "I am giving you command of all human fleets. Every ship we have is yours to command." Choi stood at attention. "What are my orders, Madam President?" Ba's eyes were hard as stone. "Make them regret the day they burned General Park." 3 weeks passed. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance *. Around him, 200 human ships waited for his command. It was the largest fleet humans had ever built. Lieutenant Kim stood at his side. Her burns had healed, but scars still marked her face and arm. She would carry them forever, just as she carried the memory of General Park's death. "Are you ready, Lieutenant?" Choi asked. Kim nodded. "The drones are set, Admiral. All ships report ready." Choi looked at the star map. A red dot showed their target. The main Krun base in the Epsilon system. It was where the Krun had gathered after destroying the human colonies. According to General Park's files, Kim said, The Krun ships have a weakness. Their command systems can't handle certain kinds of electromagnetic pulses, and they expect us to attack like everyone else has. Choi added. Head on, ship against ship. He turned to the communications officer. Send the order. All ships jump now. The human fleet entered faster than light travel. When they came out, they were just outside the Epsilon system. Long-range scans showed 50 Krun warships around the third planet. They outnumber us 4-1, said Captain Zhang, looking worried. Numbers won't help them today, Choi said. He nodded to Kim. Begin the operation. Kim pressed a button on her console. From the holds of the human ships, small objects began to fly out. Thousands of them, each no bigger than a car. They were drones, each carrying a special EMP weapon. The Krun don't know about our drones, Kim explained to the bridge crew. They're too small for their sensors to spot. On the main screen, they watched as the drones spread out, moving toward the Krun fleet. The Krun are hailing us, said the communications officer. Put them on screen, Choi ordered. A Krun commander appeared. His yellow eyes gleamed with confidence. Humans, he said, you are brave to come here after what happened to your colonies. Surrender now, and we will let some of you live as our servants. Choi smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. We're not here to surrender. We're here to deliver a message. The Krun commander laughed. What message could you possibly have for us? This one, Choi said. He nodded to Kim, who pressed another button. At once, all the drones activated. Bright blue pulses of energy shot out from them, washing over the Krun ships. On the screen, the Krun commander looked confused as his ship's lights flickered. What did you? The screen went dark. All Krun ships are dead in space, reported Captain Zhang. Their power systems are completely disabled. Choi stood up. Move our fleet in. Target their weapons and engines only. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. The human fleet moved forward. Without power, the Krun ships couldn't fight back or run away. One by one, the human ships fired, carefully destroying the weapons and engines of each Krun vessel. When it was done, the Krun fleet floated helpless in space. Now what, Admiral? Asked Captain Zhang. Do we board them? Choi shook his head. No, we send them home. He turned to Kim. Find me their least damaged ship, one that can still fly with repairs. An hour later, one Krun ship had power again. Inside it were packed all the surviving Krun from the other ships. Open a channel to them, Choi ordered. When the connection was made, Choi looked into the camera. Take this message to your emperor, he said. Tell him that General Park was my friend. Tell him that those colonies had millions of innocent people. And tell him that what happened here today is only the beginning. The Krun ship limped away, carrying survivors who had expected to win an easy battle, but instead had witnessed the beginning of humanity's revenge. Emperor Yoon Soo-jin sat on his golden throne in the Grand Palace on the Krun homeworld. His face looked human, but his yellow eyes showed his Krun nature. His ancestors were Koreans taken from Earth centuries ago. Now he ruled the greatest empire in the galaxy. Or at least, he had until today. What do you mean, the entire fleet was defeated? He shouted. Before him knelt the captain of the ship that had escaped the human attack. The captain kept his head low, afraid to look at his emperor. Forgive me, Great One. The humans, they didn't fight like others. They used small machines that sent out energy pulses. Our ships just stopped working. Emperor Yoon stood up. His long red robe flowed around him as he walked down the steps from his throne. Impossible. No one has such technology. The humans must have had help. The doors to the throne room opened. Grand Marshal Lee walked in. He was the Empire's greatest military leader, with a record of 50 victories and no defeats. Unlike the Emperor, he was fully Krun, with scaled skin and sharp teeth. The report is true, my Emperor, Lee said. The human fleet defeated our forces without losing a single ship. How? Emperor Yoon demanded. They are primitives. We burned their general. We destroyed their colonies. They should be begging for mercy. Grand Marshal Lee showed a small data device. Our spies report that the humans have been preparing for us. The general we killed had been studying our weaknesses for years. Emperor Yun sat down heavily on the steps of his throne. For the first time in his rule, he felt afraid. "What about the other species we control?" he asked. "Have they heard of this?" "Yes," said one of his advisors. "The news is spreading. The Vex on planet Terra are already asking for more freedom. The Jiku workers on our mining worlds are slowing their work." "They're watching," Lee said. "All the races we conquered are watching to see what happens next." Emperor Yun stood up again, his fear turning to anger. "Then we must crush these humans completely. Marshal Lee, gather our main fleet. Every ship we have. We will show the humans and everyone else what happens when they defy the Empire." Lee bowed. "As you command. I will lead the attack myself." "How many ships can you gather?" the Emperor asked. 500 warships, my Emperor." The humans have never seen such a force. In the back of the throne room, a small figure listened carefully. She was Min, a servant from a species the Krun had conquered long ago. No one noticed her as she quietly left the room. Min hurried through the palace to her small room in the servants' quarters. There, she activated a hidden device and spoke quietly. "The Krun are sending their main fleet, 500 ships. Grand Marshal Lee will lead them." A voice answered from the device. "Thank you, Min. Your people will not forget your help when the day of freedom comes." Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Emperor Yun looked out at the stars from his private balcony. "These humans," he said to himself, "who are they to challenge us? We have ruled for 1,000 years. We have conquered dozens of worlds." His advisors stood quietly behind him. "Perhaps, my Emperor, we should try to make peace with them. Offer to return their territory." Emperor Yun turned, his eyes cold with fury. "Never. The Empire does not apologize. The Empire does not retreat. We will crush these humans so completely that no one will remember their name in 100 years." But deep inside, for the first time in his life, Emperor Yun felt something new: doubt. Grand Marshal Lee stood proud on his command ship. Around him, 500 Krun warships prepared to enter human space. It was the largest fleet the Empire had ever sent to battle. "The humans will learn their place today," Lee said to his officers. "Our spies say they have only 200 ships. We will crush them with our numbers." The Krun fleet jumped into the Orion Arm, a region of space filled with dense asteroid fields. Lee had chosen this path because it was the fastest way to reach Earth. As soon as they arrived, Lee felt that something was wrong. The space ahead looked strange. Many asteroids seemed to be moving in ways that weren't natural. "Sir," said one of his officers, "we're picking up strange metal readings from the asteroids." Before Lee could answer, Admiral Choi's face appeared on the main screen. "Welcome, Marshal Lee," Choi said calmly. "We've been waiting for you." Lee's eyes widened. "How did you know we were coming? How do you know my name?" Choi smiled. "We have friends, even in your palace. Now let me show you how humans fight." The screen went dark. Suddenly, hundreds of asteroids began moving toward the Krun ships. Small rockets on their sides pushed them forward at high speed. "Evasive action," Lee shouted. "Those asteroids have been modified." The Krun ships tried to move, but the asteroids were coming from all directions. Huge rocks smashed into the ships, crushing their hulls. At the same time, thousands of mines hidden in the asteroid field began to explode. Chain reactions of explosions tore through the Krun fleet. "Turn around. Retreat," Lee ordered. But as the remaining Krun ships turned to flee, they discovered a new problem. The human fleet had positioned itself behind them, cutting off their escape route. "We're trapped," said Lee's second-in-command, his voice shaking. In his command room on the human flagship, Admiral Choi stood with Lieutenant Kim at his side. "Begin the attack," Choi ordered. The human ships opened fire. Their weapons targeted the engines and weapons of the Krun vessels, disabling them one by one. Lee watched in horror as his mighty fleet fell apart around him. Ships exploded or drifted helplessly in space. After just 2 hours of battle, over 70% of the Krun fleet was destroyed or disabled. "My Marshal," said his officer, "a human ship is approaching. They're demanding we surrender." Lee had never surrendered in his life, but he had also never faced an enemy like the humans. "Lower our shields," he said finally. "I will not sacrifice more Krun lives today." Human soldiers boarded Lee's ship. Lieutenant Kim led them to the bridge, where Grand Marshal Lee waited. "You are now a prisoner of war," Kim told him. "You will be treated according to human laws." Lee looked at her with surprise. "You're not going to kill me after what we did to your general?" Kim's face showed no emotion. "That's the difference between us and you. We don't burn our enemies alive for the galaxy to watch." The human soldiers took Lee away. Kim stayed on the bridge, looking at the screens that showed the remains of the Krun fleet floating among the asteroids. On the human flagship, Admiral Choi received the news of Lee's capture. "Send a message to Earth," he told his communications officer. "Tell them the Battle of the Orion Arm is over. The Krun main fleet is destroyed. Grand Marshal Lee is our prisoner." He turned to look out at the stars. "And prepare our next move. It's time to contact the other species that the Krun have conquered. Tell them that things are about to change." Across the galaxy, the news of the Krun defeat spread like wildfire. For the first time in centuries, the mighty empire had been brought to its knees. And for the first time, the conquered peoples dared to hope for freedom. The small ship flew quietly toward planet Taro. Inside, Lieutenant Kim watched the stars pass by. Next to her sat Jun, a human diplomat. Their mission was secret and dangerous. "Are you sure they will meet with us?" Jun asked. Kim nodded. "Our spies say the Vex want freedom. They've been under Krun control for 200 years. Their ship landed in a hidden valley on planet Taro. 5 tall, thin aliens waited for them. The Vex had blue skin and 4 arms. Their large eyes blinked nervously. "We risk much by meeting you," said the Vex leader, whose name was Rel. "And we risk much by coming," Kim replied. "But we have a common enemy." Inside a cave, they showed the Vex the videos of human victories against the Krun. The aliens watched with wonder. "No one has ever defeated their fleets before," Rel said. "We have technology we can share," Kim told them. "And weapons. With your help, we can free all the planets the Krun have taken." By the end of the day, the Vex had agreed to join the humans. They would share their knowledge of Krun bases and help plan attacks. Similar meetings happened on 4 other worlds. The Jiku, who could build ships faster than anyone. The Bora, who had the best medical knowledge in the galaxy. The Nax, who could hide entire planets with their cloaking technology. And the Zim, whose soldiers were known for their bravery. One by one, they joined with the humans. Back on his flagship, Admiral Choi met with representatives from all 5 alien species. It was the first time they had all been in one room together. "Together, we are stronger than the Krun," Choi told them. "Each of you brings skills that the others need." The aliens looked at each other. For centuries, the Krun had kept them apart, afraid they would unite. "What do you want in return for helping us?" asked the Jiku leader. "Freedom," Choi said simply. "Not just for humans, but for all of you. When the Krun are defeated, each species will govern itself." The alliance grew stronger each day. The Jiku built new ships for the human fleet. The Bora healed the wounded. The Nax hid rebel bases with their technology. The Zim and Vex joined humans in battle. On the Krun homeworld, Emperor Yum received the news with growing fear. "How is this possible? 5 species are working with the humans now." His advisors could not meet his eyes. "The outer planets are in full rebellion," one said. "We've lost contact with 20 worlds." Emperor Yum knew he was running out of options. He sent a message to Admiral Choi. "Humans," he said, trying to sound strong, "we offer you peace. We will recognize your territory and leave you alone. Just end this conflict. Choi showed the message to the Alliance leaders. Then he sent his answer. We don't want independence, Choi said, looking directly at the camera. We want justice for General Park and every other victim of your empire. And we will have it. The Alliance fleet grew to 1,000 ships. They moved toward the 5 core worlds of the Krun Empire, freeing planets as they went. Unlike the Krun, they did not conquer. They offered freedom and membership in the new alliance. Billions of beings who had lived as slaves for generations saw hope for the first time. On her ship, Lieutenant Kim looked at the star map. The alliance had taken back half the galaxy already, but the hardest part was still ahead. The core worlds have the strongest defenses in the galaxy, she told her crew. A shield network protects all 5 planets. No fleet has ever broken through. She smiled at their worried faces. But we're not going to break through. We're going to do something they would never expect. The Alliance fleet reached the edge of Krun space. Ahead of them floated 5 planets, the heart of the Empire. A giant energy shield connected 20 space stations, creating a bubble around all 5 worlds. No weapon can break that shield, said Ral, the Vex leader. Admiral Choi nodded. That's why we won't try to break it. We'll change it instead. In a small room, Lieutenant Kim met with her team. There were 6 of them, 2 humans, a Vex, a Zim, a Nax, and a Jiku. Each had skills the others did not. This mission is very dangerous, Kim told them. We need to enter the shield network and change how it works. Many of us may not come back. The Zim soldier, Dex, stood tall. My people have been slaves for 300 years. I would give my life to end that. The others nodded. They all had reasons to fight. Their small ship was special. The Nax had made it invisible to Krun sensors. The Jiku had built engines that made no noise. It looked like a piece of space junk, but inside it held the best technology of 5 worlds. They flew through a small gap in the shield that opened to let Krun ships pass. Once inside, they docked with the main shield station. Remember, Kim said as they put on their spacesuits, we're not here to destroy the shield. We're here to reprogram it. They entered the station through a service door. The halls were empty. The Krun did not expect anyone to reach this far into their territory. The team moved quickly to the main control room. The Jiku, named Pol, went to work on the computers. The shield works both ways, Pol explained as his 6 fingers flew over the controls. It keeps ships out and it keeps ships in. I can change it to be one way only. How long will it take? Kim asked. 20 minutes, Pol said. But at that moment, alarms began to sound. A Krun security team had found their ship. We've been discovered, Dex said, pulling out his weapon. I will hold them off. Finish the work. The Zim ran to the door, ready to fight. Kim turned to the others. Help Pol. I'll help Dex. The battle in the hallway was fierce. Kim and Dex fought side by side as Krun soldiers tried to reach the control room. Kim's training and Dex's strength kept the enemy back, but there were many of them. A laser shot hit Dex in the shoulder. He fell to one knee, but kept fighting. Go back to the others, he told Kim. I can hold them longer. I won't leave you, Kim said, firing her weapon. Inside the control room, Pol worked as fast as he could. The others protected him, blocking the second door as more Krun soldiers tried to enter. Almost done, Pol said. Just a few more minutes. Kim and Dex were pushed back to the control room door. Dex was hit again, this time in the leg. It's done, Pol shouted suddenly. The shield is now one way. Ships can enter but can't leave. The team ran back to their ship, carrying the wounded Dex. Krun soldiers chased them, firing their weapons. The small ship launched just as the Krun reached the dock. As they flew away, Kim looked back at the shield, which now glowed a different color. Send the signal to Admiral Choi, she told the Nax pilot. Tell him the trap is set. Outside the shield, The Alliance fleet received the message. Admiral Choi smiled for the first time in weeks. All ships, prepare to enter the shield, he ordered. The Krun core worlds are now open to us. One by one, the 1,000 ships of the Alliance moved through the shield. Once inside, they spread out, surrounding the 5 planets of the Krun core. On his flagship, Admiral Choi opened a channel to all 5 worlds. People of the Krun Empire, he said, your ships cannot leave. Your emperor cannot escape. But we offer safe passage to all civilians who wish to leave these worlds. This fight is with your leaders, not your people. The Krun were trapped in their own home. For the first time in their history, the Empire faced an enemy on their own worlds. Emperor Yoon paced in his palace throne room. Outside, thousands of Krun citizens were trying to leave the planet. Many ships had already gone, filled with people seeking safety with the Alliance fleet. They're taking our people, Yoon shouted to his guards. Stop them. But the guards looked at each other with doubt in their eyes. They had families too. Families they wanted to keep safe. Captain Han, the head of the Emperor's guard, stepped forward. He was young for his position, but brave and smart. My Emperor, Han said carefully, perhaps we should consider surrender. The humans have offered fair terms. No one else needs to die. Emperor Yoon's face twisted with anger. Surrender? Never. The Empire has ruled for 1,000 years. I will not be the one to end it. He walked to a computer panel and pressed his hand against it. A hidden door opened in the wall, revealing a room filled with large glowing devices. Do you know what these are, Captain Han? Yoon asked. Han's eyes grew wide. Quantum disruptors. But they're forbidden weapons. They would destroy not just this world, but create a chain reaction through the entire system. Exactly, said the Emperor. If I cannot rule the core worlds, then no one will have them. He began to activate the devices. Lights blinked on as the countdown started. In 6 hours, everything within this star system will be destroyed, Yoon said. I sent a private ship for myself. I will rebuild the Empire elsewhere. Captain Han looked at the other guards. Without words, they knew what had to be done. I cannot allow that, my Emperor, Han said, drawing his weapon. The other guards did the same. They surrounded Yoon, weapons pointed at him. This is treason, Yoon shouted. No, Han replied. This is saving our people. While this happened in the palace, Admiral Choi and Lieutenant Kim prepared the final attack. Their ships surrounded the Krun throne world. Our sensors show thousands of Krun citizens leaving the planet, Kim reported. They're accepting our offer of safety. Choi nodded. Good. Our fight is not with the people, but with their leaders. Suddenly, an urgent message came from the planet. It was from Captain Han. Alliance fleet, this is Captain Han of the Imperial Guard. Emperor Yoon has activated quantum disruptors. They will destroy the entire system in 6 hours. We have him in custody, but we need help to stop the devices. Choi turned to Kim. Take our best team down there now. We need to stop those disruptors. Kim's shuttle raced to the palace. With her were the top scientists from all 6 Alliance species. They landed in the palace gardens and ran inside, following Han's directions. They found the room with the disruptors. The countdown showed 4 hours left. Can you stop them? Han asked, worry clear on his face. The Jiku scientist examined the devices. Yes, but it will take time. They're connected to each other. If we try to shut one down the wrong way, they'd all explode. Kim looked at the countdown. Work fast. We'll guard the door. For 3 tense hours, the scientists worked. Guards loyal to the Emperor tried twice to enter the room, but Kim and Han's forces kept them back. Finally, with just 30 minutes left, the Jiku scientist looked up with a smile. It's done. The disruptors are disabled. In a secure room elsewhere in the palace, Emperor Yoon sat under guard. He looked up as Kim and Han entered. You've lost, Kim told him. Your weapons are disabled. Your fleet is destroyed. Your people have chosen to leave rather than die for you. Yoon stared at her with hate in his eyes. Who are you to speak to me this way? I am emperor of the greatest power in the galaxy. Not anymore, said Captain Han. The empire fell the day you decided to burn General Park. Kim's comm device beeped. It was Admiral Choi. Lieutenant, bring the former emperor to the main square. It's time for him to surrender formally. The galaxy will be watching. 1 month later, ships from all corners of the galaxy gathered near Earth. They floated in space above the same spot where the news of General Park's execution had first been received. A large space station had been built there. Inside its main hall, leaders from all the freed worlds waited. The walls were clear, showing the stars all around them. Admiral Choi stood at the center with Lieutenant Kim beside him. They wore formal uniforms with no weapons. This was not a day for fighting. Are you ready? Choi asked Kim. She nodded. The scars on her face and arm were still visible, reminders of how this all began. Yes, Admiral. I've been ready since the day General Park died. The doors opened. Captain Han walked in, leading the former Emperor Yoon. The Krun leader no longer wore his royal clothes. He looked smaller somehow, less mighty than before. Behind them came representatives from all the species that had once been part of the Krun Empire. Former slaves now stood as free people. We gather here today to end one age and begin another, Admiral Choi said to the crowd. The Krun Empire, which ruled through fear and violence, is no more. Han stepped forward with a document. As the chosen representative of the Krun people, I sign this treaty dissolving the empire forever. One by one, leaders from each world signed the document. They agreed to form a new galactic commonwealth where all species would have equal rights and representation. No species will rule over another, Choi explained. Each world will govern itself, and all will work together for peace. When the signing was done, a council member approached Choi. Admiral, the council has voted. We want you to lead the new commonwealth. Choi shook his head. No, humans fought this war to end the rule of one species over others, not to replace the Krun with ourselves. Instead, he proposed a rotating council with members from all worlds taking turns as leaders. The idea was accepted with approval from everyone. As the meeting ended, ships from 100 worlds lit up the space around Earth. It was a new beginning for the galaxy. Later that day, Lieutenant Kim visited a quiet place on a colony world. It was where General Park had lived with his family before his final mission. A memorial had been built there, with a statue of the general looking up at the stars. As Kim stood there, a young girl approached. She was about 10 years old, with the same determined eyes as the general. Are you Lieutenant Kim? The girl asked. The one who was with my father at the end. Kim knelt down to look the child in the eyes. Yes, I am. You must be Mina, General Park's daughter. The girl nodded. She looked at the statue of her father, then back at Kim. My mother says my father's death started a war, but ended up freeing many people. Her voice was small but strong. Did his sacrifice mean something? Was it worth it? Kim looked up at the evening sky. The stars were just becoming visible. Ships from newly freed worlds passed overhead, their lights moving peacefully through the darkness. On those ships were people who had been slaves just months ago, children who would grow up free because of what had happened, species that now worked together instead of fighting each other. She thought of the long journey from that terrible day when she watched General Park burn to today, when a new age of peace had begun. Your father stood tall when faced with the Empire, Kim told the girl. He showed the galaxy that humans will never accept tyranny, not for ourselves and not for others. And that changed everything. Mina smiled, a small brave smile that reminded Kim of the general. Together, they watched the stars grow brighter in the darkening sky, symbols of a galaxy forever changed by one man's courage and the fury it had awakened in humanity.